everyone to the Healthcare Innovation Virtual Summit. I'm Dr. Abhinav Chandra, and I'll be talking about the role of AI and ML in healthcare. A little background about me. I'm the Executive Medical Director of Yuma Regional Medical Center, and I will be using some of the practices where we have found success in using AI in benefiting our healthcare system. So there's a framework of my talk today, just a brief introduction about ML, AI, and the different terminologies. Role of research, how it has helped in clinical trial matching, AI's role in liquid diagnostics and biopsy, its role in radiological and pathological diagnostics, how AI can help or is helping to expand care and services, especially in underserved communities, use of big data in risk prediction, and continuous monitoring with wearables and personal devices. Now, again, this talk will not be encompassing all the aspects or will be touching all the aspects of AI, as you'll see that it is a very fast growing field, and I will be picking some aspects of it, and so as to give you a good introduction. So definitions, artificial intelligence, or most commonly used as AI, is a technique that enables computers to mimic human intelligence. And this terminology and concept has been there since the 1950s. Machine learning is a form of AI, which is used to make predictions from large data sets. And the use of machine learning terminology has been since the 1980s. Where the field has seen really an exponential growth is in the last 1 to 2 decades with deep learning, which is a subset of ML, in which artificial neural networks adapt and learn from vast amounts of data. And this progress has been great since the 2010s. Natural language processing, or NLP, is a branch of AI that enables machines to understand the human language, analyze, manipulate, and automatically perform tasks like translation, spell check, or topic classifications. So that's like a brief overview. The timeline, how it has progressed since the 2010 to 2019, the first decade, it was, and maybe even a little bit before 2010, the role was especially in utilization in the genomic sequences. When the whole human genome map was mapping, AI helped in that aspect. EHR, electronic health records, definitely it has great value in that. In robotic surgery, it is helping, and in the last decade. Now, in this decade, what we have really seen is a great progress in clinical research, personalized healthcare, and in drug development. So AI healthcare market is growing exponentially. In 2019, the market size was about $3.9 billion, and it's expected to reach $61 billion by 2027, with a CAGR, a compound annual growth rate of 43%. The impact of COVID-19 on this industry has only been to progress the industry much more faster. The main areas of growth is in increasing efficiency in drug discovery, advancement in precision medicine, in providing support services for chronic medical diseases, and for taking care of the global elderly population. So that's where the projected growth is in the coming years. HBR, Harvard Business Review, in 2018 in their publications had mentioned about the top 10 applications that could change healthcare. And a few of these we'll be touching in the time of my talk. I'll be talking about these. So first is the robot-assisted surgery. And that's the Da Vinci, which I think most of the healthcare systems have now. It causes key drivers for adoption is technological advances in robotic solutions for more types of surgery. With growing healthcare shortages, we have seen an increasing virtual nursing assistants. So labor shortage are prevalent. It has only been increased in the COVID era, and the role for these virtual assistants is growing more. It also helps in administrative workflow, causes easier integration of existing technology infrastructure. It has a role in fraud detection, also in dosage error reduction. I think the EMRs, they do very good job in making sure that there's no interactions between medications. There are helps in connected machines, in clinical trial participation, where our program has definitely had great success. In preliminary diagnosis, especially in the imaging or the pathology, where there's the data is immense, you can come to a preliminary diagnosis based on AI, and then the pathologist or the radiologist or the ophthalmologist can make sure that the diagnosis is accurate. Also in automated image diagnosis, as in radiology we are seeing, and also has a role in cybersecurity. So those are the top 10 areas that were identified in 2018. Definitely this spectrum will be very different post-COVID. In the last 18 months, we have seen a great impetus on telehealth, so it would be definitely on this list right now. But still this list is quite relevant. So I wanted to share a case study where we had participated in a clinical trial program. So Yuma Regional Cancer Center partnered with Tempus Labs, and Tempus is a company which is a data-driven company, which performs next generation sequencing. So of cancer tumor cells, they do the next generation sequencing. The goal is that if there is any targeted mutation, then we would have some drugs for that mutation. So based on that partnership, what we found was what Tempus does is high fidelity matches using patient records, which includes the next generation sequencing of data, as well as the EMR, which is ingested through the EMR integrations. Now, Tempus sequence patients were automatically matched to trials using a matching application. And then the EMR records were run through an NLP data abstraction model to identify patients and an actionable gene of interest. So during that partnership for about, and it's an ongoing partnership, still going on, but we looked at our data for about 1 year or so. So we had about 23 trials open during that period. We had about 7,441 unique patient records ingested. Now, by no means any person would have been able to handle that workload. Patients with who had an NGS report or a gene of interest and went through the first pass, like they were not diseased and the encounter were within 18 months, we identified about 278 of those patients. And then subsequently, there were more high-level matches, which were matching with the biomarker, the cancer subtype, and site. So kind of a preliminary inclusion criteria. There were about 81 of those were identified. And time trial matches communicated. So then proactively a report comes to the site for our cancer program stating that we have these matches and for these patients. And based on these partnership, we were able to consent to about 20 patients and enroll them into clinical trials. Now, again, these are very state-of-the-art clinical trials, which in a area like Yuma, we would have very difficulty in opening and enrolling patients. The nearest tertiary center for any patient is around 180 miles for them to go and get enrolled. So being able to open this trial in a clinically relevant time period, I think was a great success for our program. We did present it as a poster in the annual meeting of American Society of Clinical Oncology. So this data, what I'm presenting on this slide, is specific to Yuma, and the whole data from all the other sites from the of clinical is they had 32 sites. They had 20 to 23 clinical trials. Again, the number of patients unique record ingested was almost up to 200,000. NGS report or gene of interest were around 30 to 32,000. Number of matches were around 1,500, and time trial matches were around 332 based on these. So again, great success by this partnership and using AI to help enrolling patients, especially in clinically underserved areas, into very relevant clinical trials. The other roles where AI and machine learning helps is in early detection of cancer. Machine learning or AI can detect very weak signals in blood and detect and diagnose cancer at early stages. They can also be useful in monitoring the response to cancer treatment. So there are a plethora of companies in this spectrum. One that really makes an impression is Freenome. It detects DNA, RNA, proteins in blood plasma. It has a multi-omics platform which identifies key biological signals and uses machine learning to understand additive signatures for detecting cancer early. There are definitely other players in this field as well. EVE, or Evolutionary Model for Variant Effect, is another collaboration between Harvard Medical School and Oxford University. The trainings model data set was about 250 million protein sequences. And based on the learning on those large data set, EVE can now predict even likelihood of each single amino acid variant to be either benign or pathogenic. So helps in detecting genetic variations and genetic diseases very successfully. The role of where we see quite growing is, or impact where it can really impact, is in the realm of pathology. And there are many companies in this realm, in this field. But overall, and these are the other companies also listed on the left side, still a very limited application. Where it can really help is where areas where we have shortage of pathologists. Solutions like data augmentation, image synthesis, and weakly supervised or unsupervised deep learning models are being explored. Now, again, we are not there where we can do an unsupervised DL models and deploy them, but we need, I think where it needs to be is weakly supervised areas where there are shortage of pathologists. And full integration of AI and pathology seems still a distant currently, and there are a lot of companies which are making great progress in this field. One area where we had success and quite a lot of literature is in diabetic retinopathy detection. So this is like a monotonous where you look at images and try to detect. A lot of products which I have listed over here, thousands of images a day, and AI can provide results within seconds to minutes of taking the photos. There has been some FDA approval of autonomous AI to detect diabetes-related diseases. These have found to be safe, efficient, and equitable, but they vary with their sensitivity and specificity among various trials. This publication gives a good list of all the sensitivity and specificities of all these. The main one highlighted, to attention that the number of patients were around 100,000 and another study was around 20,000. Very large data sets. Good to see some increased sensitivity of 91 and specificity of 91 as well. But the other study had a specificity of around 54%. So they are marred by different sensitivities and specificities. Still a little bit more work needs to be done. The other one, Bosch, had a low number, around only 560 in that. Radiological applications, again, there are a lot of startup companies in this realm. AI has shown good accuracy and sensitivity in the identification of imaging abnormalities. But what needs to be really balanced is where you want to enhance your detection, but you do not want to overdiagnose. So marrying the two together is an art, and it will need time to filter out how we can do that. Because underdiagnosis can be a problem, but overdiagnosis also leads to more testing and more interventions, more anxiety for the patient. So equally, both needs to be, we need to have a good balance between the two. There are some next generation of radiological tools, but what the goal or end model is, having your tests so sensitive, like a radiological a CAT scan, which is suggestive, highly suggestive of cancer, and then you have a liquid biopsy where you can take the blood and detect the cancer. So right now what's happening is if you see something on a CAT scan, say in a lung lesion, you have to put in a needle into the lung lesion and get a biopsy. But the gold standard where we really want to do is, even without a biopsy with great sensitivity and specificity, you want to make sure that you can diagnose cancer. And I think that's the gold standard where we need to go. I think also AI and radiologists and not really eliminate the need for radiologists. I think the main fear in the field is, are they coming after my jobs? But I don't feel that's the case. I think the best case scenario is where these technologies will be helping either radiologists or pathologists or ophthalmologists in making the diagnosis. Expanding care or services in underserved communities. One good example was, which I gave of Yuma, where we were able to enroll patients in clinical trials. Now, there are other areas as well. There have been data-driven artificial intelligence AI models for remote triaging prior to coming. So this is a study done, I think in South Korea, where they use AI models to predict which patients needs to come to the tertiary center, which can be localized over there. AI is also being utilized in India for screening of cancer in remote places, to some extent in osteoporosis prediction models and in rehabilitation. BAGMO is a non-governmental organization which addresses lack of blood availability in rural India, and that is based on AI models. Risk prediction is where I think we have seen a whole lot of already presence of AI, something which is called as a deterioration index in our EPIC, which is the electronic medical record system we use. It gives every patient, it gives you, especially with the patients are inpatient, it gives you the chance or the risk score for the patient as to how soon, or if they would, based on the data, what it has ingested over time, is whether the patient's outcome would be in the next few days. And it is very useful in predicting patients and taking care of patients of now and preventing those downhill outcomes. All models out there which predicts depression, stroke. Kensai is a company. I personally, our healthcare system does not have that, but my review of literature, there was good data on Kensai, which is a big data and AI, which predicts clinical, financial, and operational risk as to who might get sick and what key drivers of hospitals' healthcare costs are. H2O AI is also a similar platform where healthcare systems have been used successfully in predicting a patient's risk of hospital-acquired infections. Da Vinci, I think most of the healthcare systems have come on board on using this. The data is collected from surgical systems such as Da Vinci enables subtasks like cutting, suturing, dissection, retraction, and debridement. It has made procedures more precise and predictable. It is what's called as robotic surgery. So it is done by a performer, a surgeon who's next to it, and then the Da Vinci robot actually performs the surgery on basis on the surgeon's directions. So AI-assisted robotic procedures have shown in some studies to almost decrease, have lesser complications than surgeons who operate traditionally. So also there are a lot of other startup companies who have used virtual reality in training surgeons, having a virtual operating room. The gold standard, which they felt would be with the advent of 5G, is a surgeon sitting on a beach and then operating remotely in an OR miles away. But we have not get there. That's what's promise of 5G is. So hopefully at some point we might get there, but still a little long ways to go. Nuance Dragon Medical Practice. I think it's a common tool that most of the medical providers utilize, but it also uses AI and NLP to some extent. Definitely, I can vouch that life has been much easier since have this. Previously, we used to dictate over a phone, and then in a 1 or 2 days later get the transcription and then approve it to get it uploaded into the medical record. This has really obviated the need for having any scribes or medical transcription. It decreases error, more tuned to understand medical terminologies, and thereby increases efficiency. Definitely has led to better physician satisfaction and has decreased burnout. And I can vouch for this product very nicely, because even very complex chemotherapic medications, when we dictate it, I don't have to do a spell check or correct it. It almost inevitably gets it. And again, it learns from it. You can train it as well. So it is a learning tool. So definitely a very big proponent of Nuance Dragon medical practice too. AI chatbots, we have seen an increase of these definitely in the COVID era. They can help with some simple tasks like schedule management, medical appointments, labs, imaging. They can help with simple data like demographics and from patient. There's also information. A lot of like IBM bots, and also many have these chatbots, WebMD. They can look up WebMD and give patients information in real time. They have been of mental health assistance as well as help in prescription refills. Definitely in the COVID era, we have seen a whole lot of increase in AI chatbots and telehealth. So most of the tech companies have heavily invested in AI in healthcare. A couple of examples that really have fascinated is from Google and their collaboration with a company called DeepMind. They looked at big data sets, one from US and UK, in understanding of eye diseases, and based on their training model, they were able to decrease the absolute reduction of about 5.7% and 1.2% in false positive, and about 9.4 or 2.7% in false negative. So definitely enhanced the data, what was already there. Also, the DeepMind model, it helps in predicting about 55 or 56% of all inpatient episodes of acute kidney injury, and about 90% of all kidney injuries that can subsequent administration of dialysis. And that's with a lead time of 2 days. So there is still actionable where you could do things ahead of time so as to prevent damage or from deterioration of the kidney function. So in synopsis, we have a plethora of technologies and startups in this field. There are patient-directed technologies like wearables, AI chatbots. There are mental health and personal health systems. There is systems which help in genetics and hereditary diseases. There are patient-directed technology like medical imaging, which helps in, physician-directed technology like medical imaging and pathology, which we talked about. EHR, great growth in that field, and in prediction models, and looking into data analytics. Hospital-specific technologies, couple of that I mentioned already. In clinical research, like in genetics and clinical trial enrollment and drug discovery. And during the COVID period, definitely a huge exponential growth in telemedicine, disease management and lifestyle management also. So these are the broad groups where you can divide these technologies. But not everything is all rosy going forward. There have been some challenges. There have been lack of appropriate implementation strategy, marrying the legacy technologies with the new technologies of future. That has been a challenge. There has been some ethical issues around it. And again, the society really needs to have a good debate as to where do we need to go about, especially around unsupervised deep learning. Now, again, as the Teslas and other autonomous things come more, I think these technologies will also be much more acceptable in common people. There is quite frequently a reluctance among medical community to adopt AI based technologies. Only we have seen the early adopters. I don't think they have bridged the chasm or crossed the chasm to say many feel that these technologies will take away their jobs. but the way I see it, they will only augment and help you in making decisions. I don't think it's there in the next 2 or 3 decades that it will completely obviate the need for any physicians. There's the same fear among other places, like fear of replacing humans. There's lack of interoperability between different AI companies. That's a challenge. Regulations, I think, is if the regulations grow faster or come to terms faster, I think that's where this the next generation or next wave of growth will really come. And need for periodic updates, which with any technology we need to keep up and keep evolving. So that's in a nutshell about how current use of AI and ML in healthcare is and where the field is heading. Thank you very much for your attention.